Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gwen and today I'm going to be talking about my favorite fantasy series currently. I have 5 series that I've chosen, so let's jump into it. The first series I would like to start with talking about is the Raven Shadow Trilogy, written by Anthony Ryan, and overall I give this series a 4 stars. In this series, we follow Valen Al-Sorna, who is a boy who gets dropped off by his father in front of the 6th Order, and throughout this book, you only follow his POV. He learns friendships, loyalty, and that the 6th Order and all the other orders that protect the faith have a lot of secrets and unfortunately not a lot of pros to them. And eventually, by the end of the book, you reach a point as to why Valen is telling this all to a historian. The rest of the series, which is just a trilogy, adds 3 more POVs, 2 of them being female and another being a brother of the 6th with Valen. And in the rest of the series, you get to learn more about the magic system, the outer world from where they live, and how the world possibly will die if Valen and his friends don't get rid of the evil entity. So some things that I love about this series and why it's part of my currently favorite fantasy series is because Anthony Ryan's writing is really well done, and the pacing in all of these books is really well done. The second thing that I love about this book is Valen, specifically with his sibling ship with 2 of the other POVs that you will meet throughout the rest of the trilogy. I really enjoyed them, and I loved the bonding experiences, but also the turmoil that comes with knowing Valen so well, or not knowing Valen so well. The third thing that I love about this book is that it's also grim dark, so it's can be very disturbing at times. So that would be a warning to this series. And then the last thing is that I love the growth as Valen as a character throughout all 3 books. That's why I love this series. In 4th place, the series I have chosen is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. The overall rating that I gave this series is 4.5 stars. In essence, we're following a prophecy that was given in their faith, because there's just basically one overall faith in the series, and it talks of one good and one bad individual in order to make the prophecy become truth. The 2 people in question for being the good person is we follow Corbin and Nether. Nether is a prince and Corbin is just your general kid. Eventually, at the beginning of this first book, they both find out about the prophecy. One of them really wants to be the bright star, the good, and another one is very cautious about being the bright star. And we follow through all 4 books the prophecy fulfillment between these 2 individuals, their friends either helping or hindering them, and if this world will soon collapse because of this prophecy. The things that I love about this series are, 1, the amount of characters who get full arcs, which is pretty much every POV that you read. I loved the pacing of the writing in this. John Gwynne does a very great job on keeping the reader very much involved and wanting to keep flipping the pages to learn more, if people survive, if battles will go okay. The third thing that I love about this series is how gentle each of the romances is approached and how real they feel, because they're not insta-love. Some of these relationships flourish over all 4 books, but they're all very realistic, and I loved that so much. And the last thing that I really enjoyed about this book series was that the battle scenes were not boring to read at all. As another note to this series, I will always recommend The Faithful and the Fallen as a good beginning adult fantasy series to try out because of its simplicity, and that there isn't a lot of things you have to memorize while reading through the series. Everything is very fluid, straightforward, and you won't forget people's names as easily in the more bigger and epic high fantasies. Highly recommend the series, and I will always be talking about it as well. So the next series needs no introduction for its 3rd place, because in my last video I've already talked about it, and that would be the Broken Earth Trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. Overall, I'd give this trilogy a 4.5 to 4.75 star rating. This series is amazing, so I'll try to make the summary as short as possible since I've talked about it before. So I've just reread the back of the book to help me summarize, and I really like what it states. So I'm just gonna read it for you guys to make this brief. This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift. It starts with death. It starts with betrayal. And I think that puts into perspective what happens in this trilogy altogether. The reasons why I love this trilogy. First thing, the family. I love how family is represented in this book. Two, I love the relationships, whether platonic or romantic. And third, the writing in this is so different from any other adult series I've ever read, and I wish more series were written in this way. It's very sassy, very confronting, and very blunt. And I laughed so many times when I read from the narrator's perspective and enjoyed thoroughly reading everyone's perspective in this manner. Love the series. More people should read it. If you have not, please read this series. In second place, the series that I chose was the Ancestor Trilogy by Mark Lawrence. And overall, I'd give this series a 4.75. A short synopsis for this book is you are following a young girl named Nona Gray who has been convicted of a crime, but instead of dying for that crime, she gets bought by a nun and starts her journey on training and learning how to kill people. A big thing to note for this world is that this planet is slowly becoming ice, and eventually Nona has to find a way in order for that to stop happening. It's very much high stakes by the end of the series, and you will just fall in love with Nona Gray by the end, guaranteed. Just a few points to make on why I love this series. First, the friendships in here. As you probably can tell by now, I really genuinely love well-written friendships, and in here we have so many friendships with girls that we don't see a lot or talked about a lot in series that are positives, and I love that about this series. The strength of friendship in here is just perfect. Next point I want to make is that everyone is a badass because everyone is an assassin. It's great. The third thing I want to mention is it's grim dark and definitely dark. That's the fourth point I want to make. Everyone is a morally great character, and it makes it a lot more realistic to read and understand these characters as well. One thing I did want to mention is that this first book does start out very slow with writing. Some of the chapters are still in the same day, and so that's why it feels like very pulled and lengthy. But once you get to a point, which is it's about halfway through the book, where it starts picking up normally and the pacing is great, and through the other two books in the trilogy, there's never a worry about the writing pace. Just a little side note if you do pick up this trilogy. The series that takes number one in my favorite series currently for fantasy is the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Stephen Erickson, with novellas and prequels books by Ian Cameron Esselmont along with Stephen Erickson. Overall, I give this series 5 stars. This is where this gets a little bit difficult. Trying to summarize a 10-book series is really hard. So what I'm gonna try to do is just tell you the most basics from this first book, The Gardens of the Moon, and hopefully it might entice you. In this book, you are dropped into the aftermath of a very big battle that happens in Pale, and what you learn from that battle is that the Malazan Empire is not a huge fan of One Arm's host. Ducek One Arm is the commander of this host, and he receives word that the next city that they will be trying to take over for the Empire is Darujhistan. So he sends his bridge burners into that city, and from there the story continues, because from that point on it's going to be heavy spoilers. What also is happening at the beginning of this book that you get to see is a city being ransacked by hounds and the death and aftermath of that, and you get to learn that gods play a very heavy hand in the world of humans in this wonderful place. Also, the gods take a heavy hand to any race that is humanoid in this world. And that's where the story begins. There are so many things I love about this series. The main thing, once again, that I've said about pretty much all of the series I've talked about, is the friendships and camaraderie of these groups of people that you meet throughout the entire series, 10 books plus. The second thing I want to mention is the writing It's humorous, it's detailed, it's long-winded in some parts, but it's so needed to describe everything about this world as you go through all 10 books, and I love it to death, especially the humor. It's sarcastic and beautiful and dark. Wonderfully done. The third thing that I want to mention is the cast of characters is ginormous and the world is ginormous. Basically, I love how epic this tale is. It is true high fantasy, epic fantasy, adult fantasy that you can find, and I love it for that so much. The other thing I love is the system of magic that is used. It is never fully explained how you use the magic in this world, and I kind of love that. I kind of love the unknown of that. But something that you do understand is there are warrens in this world, and mages pull magic from those warrens. There is a range of practitioners, so there are those mages who can do only small things from those who are high mages that can do incredibly powerful work. But all of them do get tired at some point. It's not an infinite surplus of magic constantly, and I also appreciate that. And that is pretty much why I love this series so much. Everything about it is incredible. Now, I do want to mention one last thing. This is not a series I would tell anybody, or just anybody, to read. This is a series once you know that you love adult, epic, high fantasy. And again, you know yourself the best as a reader, so if any of this sounds intriguing to you, then by all means, go ahead and start enjoying it. I think the other warning I would say for this book is that some people don't like the first book, how it's written. I don't mind it, but some people do, and are always encouraged by Malazan fans and readers alike to still read the second book and see if you still don't like the series or not. Otherwise, this is my favorite series of all time, and until someone writes an even more epic adult high fantasy, this will stay in its rightful place. And there we have it. That is my top 5 adult fantasies currently, as of right now, that I super duper adore. Let me know down below in the comments what are your favorite series that I didn't mention, and hopefully I can add more of those to my TBR to read. Don't forget to follow me on all my social media platforms linked down below. I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads. And that is it for today. I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.